Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and I'm doing episode 2 of 12 with the 12-part series explaining at surface level the major things that I have overcome in this life and existence, so that I can create a documentary, not a docuseries, a documentary, a 1.5 hour documentary with really engaging clips of the things I've been through, because a photo tells 1,000 words, as we all know, and a movie tells even more words than that. Um, I'm on my way to the gym right now. This is part 2 of 12. And so I'm just going to get right into it. I'd like to keep these under 30 minutes each, and there's a lot to cover. So the last time we spoke in part 1, I kind of summarized I didn't really speak a lot about my childhood other than to say my sister and I grew up in this structured setting of mom and dad in the same household until I was about 12 years old, married, both of them working full time, living in suburban Elmhurst, middle class neighborhood. At 5 years old, a car crashed into my house, all 4 tires. We had to get a new house, and we moved from where I lived to my new house. And I still went to kindergarten that day. And that's kind of been the vibe overall for my family. Like in my household, we didn't miss school. We didn't not go to work. We handled our responsibilities regardless of what kind of trauma was going on around me. And as an adult, I've not had that same approach. As an adult, if I have noticed that my children feel ill or don't want to be at school or there's something going on, I've always been very, sensitive to that, and for myself as well. But we left off yesterday discussing how I went from this very structured setting as a child into this also very structured but disturbed setting of like criminals and people who have severe like psychological disorders that were pulling out their hair by the handful, bleeding from the scalp, cutting themselves, kind of carving into themselves and things of that nature. At 17 years old, I aged out of that, and I explained that I was married to the children's father. Um, Louis and Viviana's father is Mexican, and we were together and married for, I want to say, 6 years, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And then the same with Orlando, who is Alexis's father. And then I met Dylan. And Dylan is my kind of person who was in the reality show with me. And we were in a committed relationship. We called it a marriage. He proposed to me. So all of this is part of 2 of 12. So at this point, I'm kind of just going to summarize what our relationship and what life was like until he got sentenced and went to prison. So we left off that I was working in healthcare as an office manager at an eye doctor, and I accepted a job on Saturday and Sunday as a bottle service girl because my kids were with their father. I was newly divorced from Alexis's father. I was single, and I had never been alone in my house before. I had never been, just in the house on a Saturday or Sunday with no children and a husband there. I had never, ever, ever had like the club scene on my resume. I had never been to a bar. I had never gone out drinking with friends. The only time I had ever drank in public was like for a birthday party. If I went out for a birthday party, I had not socially experienced life. Maybe once or twice. I think I went to Bon V for my little sister's birthday. And then I think I went to the same club, Bon V, with this girl named Rebecca, when I was having a fight with the kid's father. But literally that's it. Like I was not a person who was, going out. So I'm working bottle service, and I'm also managing this eye doctor's office. And this is going on for like 6 weeks. And I hire my little sister's best friend, April, at the time, to work with me in this eye doctor. And it was me, April, and this guy named Tim, and then the doctors. And they always say that you should not hire friends or family, but I felt like I could count on April. And I was never a one-track minded person. I was in the gym prepping to compete for the NPC, which is the amateur bodybuilding competition. I had a prep coach named Christian McCoy and a personal trainer named Manny, and that was at Export Portage Park, Central and Irving. That was my home gym. And I get up literally at 5 in the morning every day and go to this gym and go to my 1 hour workout with my trainer, do 45 minutes of stairs after I was done with my trainer, back in the evening for round two. I ate my 5 meals from my 6 pack bag that I carried around with me everywhere, my cold chicken breast with my 1 cup of spinach and 3 tomatoes, and like this very customized, repetitive, redundant diet that Christian McCoy had made for me. And it was working. I mean, I was toning up, I was building muscle, I was, massing myself in the areas where I wanted to add mass. I was losing myself in the areas that I wanted to be gone. And I was just building a beautiful body to go along with this mind that I was in the process of creating. I felt a new life. I felt hope and motivation for a way that was going to release me from a 9 to 5 schedule. And I felt like it was going to be possible for me to work 3 days a week and earn the same or more than I was making working full time. Um, just with a fitness career and getting sponsors and, competing and taking clients and becoming a trainer myself and then doing bottle service on the weekends. Well, there's a huge conflict of interest. You cannot work in bottle service and train to compete. I don't care what anyone tells you. I don't care if someone claims they've been successful doing it, they're lying, they're on drugs. You just can't do it. It's impossible. Number one, in every bottle service capacity that I have ever witnessed or experienced or spoken with a woman who works there, they drink. There is a zero alcohol tolerance when you're in a prep. You cannot drink. You cannot be working bottle service and turn down drinks. You just can't do it. Your boss will let you go. I promise you. There is no nightclub capacity where the manager is going to say, this guy wants to buy a $600 bottle in a section, but only if you'll go and be his bottle service person. I'm going to say no because you don't want to do it, right? Like, they're not going to say that. They're going to say, do it, fucking get out, and let me bring in a woman who will do it. And that's the way that it has always worked. So, yeah, they taught us little tricks about, when you're starting to get too drunk, pretending that you're drinking, then spitting it out like low key and all this stuff. But that shit only works for so long. And you can only go undetected doing that for so long. And it's just it's impossible to do. The schedule, you're not getting off work doing bottle service until 4 in the morning, literally. To then go home or go to the gym, meet with a trainer, exercise, and then go home. It just doesn't work. Meal prep, all of that. Bodybuilding is a huge commitment. That's why in the gym right now, I'm not saying that I'm going to enter a prep or start a training. I don't really have time to find a way to make it to work and the gym. And I'm spreading myself very, very thin. And my children are with their father right now. They were with me at that time. So it was just, I was working dynamically. I was working 2 jobs, plus I was having 2-a-days at the gym, plus I was being a mother to my children. Dynamic. So I go to work one day and I was at this location where it was a Korean karaoke bar, and you got paid a flat $50 just for showing up. And if you got chosen, you got a $200 fee. What do I mean by chosen? I'll explain in a minute. If you got chosen to host a party, you got a flat $200 fee and then a tip out from whoever chooses you. So I would leave there with like between $400 and $600 a night easily and do nothing for it other than party and drink and dance and be fun. So what do I mean by chosen? They choose all the girls that show up for the night and you stand in a line. So you have to doll up, you have to have your hair nice, you have to have your makeup nice, you have to have on a cute outfit. And you have to, be there dressed to impress, and then you stand in a line. Mind you, I have no plastic surgery. I'm natural, 100% natural. The only thing I've ever had are injections, Botox, and Juvederm. To compete with women, babe, give me my C4, please. To compete with the women I was competing with, these women were built from the ground up. Like, these are skinny, Hispanic women and Asian women, most of them, and probably like 4 Americans who have like a little boy body that someone invested 40 grand into rebuilding for them. That's what I'm competing against. Like, these women have been built from the fucking ground up, and I'm just a regular lady, like, I was so intimidated by these women. Thanks, babe. Oh yes, they have apricot strawberry back. That's my favorite. But I kept showing up, and I was proud of myself for it, because I had worked as a promotional model before at car shows and stuff, but I had never been exposed in that regard or put myself out there in that regard. And I think that it was good for me, like, to do that. Um, but everything, in what's that, moderation. I got a little taste of making $600 in a few hours of just getting drunk and having fun. And now I was like desperate. Like, I have 3 children. Now I have 4, but at the time in my mind, it's like, I have 3 kids and I can make $600 3 nights a week. That's $1,800 a week. Or I can keep working as an office manager and make $500 for the entire week after taxes and insurance. I can't fucking live like that. That's my whole rent. And then, you know, for 2 weeks, I'm doing nothing. 3 weeks, I'm doing nothing but paying rent. Like, I can't live like that. Kids need stuff. So I just saw this huge opportunity for me to do like that again and make a lot of money doing it. And that was when I met those 4 or 5 American girls that were working with me that were also natural. Um, they kind of introduced me to that group, the Lurkers. And I'll never forget the first night I met them. That was like, Dylan's friend group. I thought that they were the coolest people ever. Like, I thought that they were fucking awesome. They were movie producers, they were music people, they had multiple studios, music studios, they had multiple production studios where they would shoot music videos, TV, movies. What are those things called when you're making like a pitch for a movie plot? A trailer, to try to get investors and shit like that. And I just thought it was the coolest fucking group I had ever met. They were nice to me. I didn't ask them for anything. I was not a drug user. I had never tried a drug in my life, that wasn't pot, like, I was not about that life. Orlando and I had tried mushrooms actually with Rizzo and Looney. That's Alexis's father. But like on some teenager shit, like watching the Discovery Channel, like planet Earth, while we each like have a cap of mushrooms, like in my living room. Like, that was my experience with drugs. We weren't regular drinkers. We tried, the mushrooms once, and this group was partying. Like, whatever you wanted, they already had it. And they were not stingy with it at all. Like, were they were just not stingy. They were like, there was nothing they had that they didn't offer to me ever. And I remember like 2 weeks after I met them, and mind you, I never went out. Me going out was going to work. I never went out ever. So they would start calling me and texting me, let's go out here. Let's do this. Do you want a job in promotions? I can pay you $5 to $10 a head if you can get them to this afters. So now I'm like, damn, these people are literally the best people that God ever made. Like, these are fucking amazing people. Like, the weekends my kids are with their fathers. I'm depressed and sad and alone. I just met this group of people that would invite me to their parties, give me free drugs and alcohol, and pay me to, promote all of this shit. Like, this is fantastic. Like, who would say no to this? So I tried doing the office manager thing and the promotion, bottle service, and all of it. I quit the gym within 3 weeks. I quit my job as an office manager within a month. I would show up to work still buzzed and high from like the weekend, because I would finish working bottle service Sunday at like 3 a.m. And then Monday I would be back at work at like 11 a.m. So it was just not enough time, in between to like get myself back together. And I tried it at a chiropractor's office. I tried it at a podiatry office, and I tried it at an ophthalmology office. And it was just not a balance I could keep. But what are you going to do? Are you going to leave the 3 days a week for $1,800? Or are you going to leave the 5 days a week for $500? And hindsight is always 2020. So once you realize that the lifestyle I want is not sustainable by just working 2 days a week, doing drugs and partying, I want to be in the gym every day. I want to be with my kids. I want to do this and that. Can I go to a party 2 days a week? For sure I can. But I can't go to a party and get fucked up and erase all of my gains in the gym and destroy my, mindset and deplete my serotonin levels and wake up on Monday sad, moody, depressed, in what's that word when people can't make you feel better? Inconsolably like crying. And that's how I was. Like I would go from being totally happy and euphoric feeling, partying and being around all these people, to like literally being in like the deepest, darkest depression you could imagine come Monday. And then I would be useless in my regular job. So I told my boss, like, I have a problem like with partying, and I am going to keep taking these 3-day parties. I cannot, work with you guys for 5 days a week and be sober and keep this 1,800 a week coming in. And I need that money. And I'm sorry, but like I can't keep working here. And it was about 2 weeks after that I met Dylan. So I was 100% all into the industry. I had left my 9 to 5 job. I was completely like ready to go. I was doing promotions for this group called, what were they called? Not Mob Deep, Sunset Deep. Sunset Deep. And Bobby Brown's daughter was like one of the owners or founders of this group. Like she was like, maybe it wasn't Bobby Brown. I think it was Bobby Brown. It was somebody very famous and like well respected in the industry, and I met her and her husband and their daughter, and they were the owners of this label. And they were throwing these parties where anything goes, but they're charging people $20 to $40 at the door, and these people are showing up for it. And of that 20 to 40, they're giving me 10 ahead. So my life became doing these bottle service parties and then going out in River North any and everywhere. And that's how I ended up getting into promotions in a more formal way. I would go to River North everywhere. I would start at like Electric, it was Shea at the time. I would go to Shea, Time, Sound Bar, Spy Bar. Of course, I would never get charged a cover. They knew I was working in promotions. And I would start promoting this shit on my Facebook, promoting this shit on my Insta, promoting this shit in person. We would go to the library and print out these little pamphlets that said the address and the time, nothing about a cover, just the address and a time. We would create this aura of exclusivity, of secrecy. It was not a fucking secret. If these people could have gotten on the rooftops and screamed about it, they would have. The more the merrier, the better money, the better time. So they were like truly like trying to get a lot of people to show. And I would literally like tap into my psychology sales background, and I would be like, how can I fucking get these people here? I'm going to create the aura of exclusivity. I'm going to create the aura of secrecy. So I would go and tell these people, like I would fold up the paper real small. I would be real hot, looking in my like little tube top and like mini skirt, long blonde hair, big booty, flat tummy, abs. And I would just like go into every club and like hand them this like really low key piece of paper and be like, yo, there's an afters. It's super exclusive. If you don't have the password on this paper, they won't let you in. Meet me there. Say Coco at the door. Ask for Coco at the door. So I would say this to probably about 1,000 people a night. And of that 1,000, I would say probably anywhere from like 50 to 300 would show up just for me, just with my name. And these parties would turn into 2-3 day parties in warehouses where people were coming and going, and they would charge them all like $20 to $50, even $100 sometimes at the door. If there were a lot of people in the party and not a lot of space, you could supply and demand. You know what I mean? So I walked out of those parties with like $300 to $400 cash on a bad night, working promotions from there. And that's not something that's sustainable. They do that for a few weeks, and then those parties go undercover for months because otherwise, whatever. So or they move the venue, and it's a different promotions team after that. So, and then there were other ones. I promoted at the Dragon Room. I promoted at Sunset Deep, all of their venues. I promoted at Johnny Blues. I promoted at all these places, but you would never really find me there partying. I would go, get paid, and go home. That was what I was about, getting money and going home. Um, After that, so I did that for about, I would say, 2 months. And that's when I met Lambo from Lambo Promotions. Lambo Promotions was more of a kind of, kind of like more of a mainstream promotions company. And what I mean by that is they were promoting for the nightclubs that have, advertisements openly, that aren't, allowing open drug use and partying, that are looking the other way. I mean, it still goes on, but they're not like encouraging it. There aren't like tables where you can go throw down $5 or $10 for a puff of nitrous oxide and shit like that. So it was just a different environment in the clubs working with Lambo. And I felt like that was what I needed at the time, because I'm always thinking about where am I going from here with this, right? If I'm turning into a promoter, what comes next? You can't be a promoter for everywhere for your whole life. Or you can maybe, but not a nightclub promoter. I've never seen a 60, 70-year-old person promoting parties to 20-year-olds. Can it be done? Maybe. Who knows? Should it be done? Hey, who knows? And that's another who knows. But I just didn't see it for myself. I saw for myself, I'm going to network, I'm going to build my following. And that's what I did. I was not working in sexy content at that time, and I had 200 followers on Instagram. I grew that just through promotions, so about 30,000 followers in about 4 months. And that was all organic, no Hootsuite, no paying for followers. That was face to face. Hi, I'm Heather Coco. My friends call me Coco. Here, come to this party, add me on the gram. And I grew that shit by myself. And then I'm in this space where I'm like, holy shit, you guys, my kids are with their fathers on the weekends. I couldn't possibly be spending my time doing anything better than making money. I'm in shape. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I see a new career path for myself in events, event planning, entertainment. I'm going to let go of healthcare, and I'm going to put all my ducks in this basket. Eggs in this basket? Eggs. I'm going to put all my eggs in this basket, and I fucking loved it. But you're on a balance beam. You're on a balance beam, and it only gets worse from there. You go from being on a balance beam to being on a balance beam blindfolded, to being on a balance beam blindfolded, drunk and high, to being on a tightrope, to being on a tightrope blindfolded. And it just gets more and more difficult to mitigate everything. You've got law enforcement. You've got, is this legal or illegal? You've got SEC, you've got taxes, you've got everyone wants a piece, you've got haters, you've got, there's just so much in that environment. When you start rising up like that, you look happy all the time. You've got money coming in, you're spending, you're taking your kids places that you've never taken them. I would go and get a suite at the Virgin for the weekend and hire a babysitter to come with me so that I could go out and promote or party or date. For money, work is what I called it, while my kids, lived in a 5-star hotel for the weekend. I wanted that lifestyle for my family and my children because I suffered my entire life. And when I say I suffered my entire life, I mean, I really fucking suffered. Being abandoned from age 14 to 18 and then being thrown into the world at 18 with no idea of how to be okay is very, very difficult. And I proceeded to make the best of a traumatized state of mind. But do you think it was easy for my ex-husbands? Let's give a round of applause to Louis, Orlando, and even Xavier. I mean, Dylan can get a little bit of it, but not really. I am fucked up. Like, I'm fucked up. If Xavier walks away for too long and too far, and I don't know where he is, everyone in the entire city of Chicago knows, because I'm laying on my horn. I'm screaming his name repeatedly. My exes went through almost the same thing. I was abandoned at 14 years old. I get really fucking scared. I am difficult to work with and difficult to love. but I'm also dynamic. And as difficult as it is, I'm also as amazing, equally as amazing. Thanks, babe. So, it's very complex. I would be so happy, and then something would trigger me. Um, and I would be like the best person to be around. Everyone would be so happy to like be around with me, to work with me, and like to have me around them. And then something would trigger me, and I would just be inconsolable, crying, scared, um, embarrassed, So, and everyone always says, well, you need to treat that. That's not anyone else's like shit to carry. That's yours. You don't think that I've been trying to treat, you don't like, what the fuck does that, what's the treatment? Like, this isn't surgery. I'm not going to go get a fracture. It's not a fracture, like a fractured bone where you could just go get it set and wait and it heals and you're good. Like, this is forever. Like, the majority of my life, I have been suffering from tremendous trauma. Have you ever woken up on your first day of kindergarten and had an actual vehicle about to explode in your living room, but you still go to school that day? I have, so I've been living since I was a baby in this heightened state of anxiety and fear. And it's not paranoia. Paranoia would be someone who'd never been through any of that, having an unrealistic fear that a car is going to crash into their home. That's paranoia. Paranoia is not what I have at all. What I have is results driven, experience based, healthy, respectful fear for the things that have gone on around me and potentially could go on again. Now, when I started working with Lambo, and Lewis and Orlando did a really great job, and I don't think that they get any credit at all. I think that they get laid into because, yeah, I mean, there were times when we would come to blows with each other, not punching, but like they would try to restrain me. A lot of people have tried to restrain me, and it freaks me out way more than it being helpful. Like, it's just not a good situation. Like, if I'm crying and pacing back and forth, just let me do that. Don't grab me and restrain me. I just don't do that, and they would do that and I would fucking freak the fuck out. And who do they call? Like, who do they ask for help? You don't put someone that you love in a facility because if they're triggered once a month, they start crying and are inconsolable for the day. No one wants to deal with that. And when you love someone, that it is what it is. This is who I am. This is what I have right now. So I'm doing, and my whole life I've been doing my best to not let it get in the way, but it is what it is. It's like you live with it, and you do your best. So it's just never been about, being a drug addict or being a party person. It's always 1000% of the time been about getting money, and the money that I need, it releases me from the oppression that they're permitted to put me through in the absence of that money. When I have the money, no one can fuck with me. I can hire people to protect me. That exposure is no longer an issue. Having the money is having not just an iron vest in the environment of an X-ray. It's like walking into an X-ray with a fucking lead, portable house around you. That's the difference. The damage that you suffer going and having an X-ray unprotected, like that you don't even think about that when you have the money, because when you have the money, you're living in a lead house in that metaphor. So that was 100% of my focus. And of course it was trauma based, and it still is trauma based. Every fucking day I'm going. I constantly live in this mental state of panic. Always, unless there are very few exceptions, but I'm for the most part, that's where I'm at, the majority of the time. If you see me driving DoorDash, it's I have to hurry. I have to get to the next one. If you see me driving Uber, it's I have to drive careful so that they can't do this, so that that my mind is just always in this state of don't get triggered. Don't let them see that you're panicking, even though you actually are. And some of the most successful people are motivated in that regard. So it doesn't make me feel like life is over for me, and it never has. If anything, it makes me feel like people are in trouble with me. They're in trouble with me because they're never going to stop me ever unless they kill me, and even then my story will live on. So I'm working promotions with Lambo, and I fucking fell in love again, with the industry, with Lambo, it was me. Lambo and I never had a romantic relationship. I felt like he was like a brother to me. It was me, Lambo, London Black, Baco. Do you guys remember Baco? He reminds me of Meek Mills. Baco Sullivan. It was the five of us. And then Lambo got married to Jessica Cho, and she would kind of, be in and out of it, but mostly it was like his baby, like not hers. And she was cool too. And we would host these parties. I remember the first event that I planned with Lambo was Rook Roca's 31st birthday party, a Mardi Gras themed event hosted at Time Chicago, which is now Liquor Box. After working for about a month in promotions, I learned not only how to leverage social media for business and money, but also how to digitally create content, how to market online, how to sell online, how to create, establish, and nourish relationships online, how to write websites, build websites, how to, kind of do any and everything that you could possibly do with social media. I was no longer using social media the way I had when I had 200 followers to say, oh, look, I took the kids to the dentist today and they all got new toothbrushes, or, oh, look, Vivi started ballet, or, oh, look, Bebe was student of the week. I kind of stopped documenting these little proud moments that my kids had, because that would be like for my intimate family. And I used it only for business. Social media was no longer a tool or a strategy for communicating with family. It was 1000% about making money, marketing, and being my voice. And all of that was going on. And then I met Dylan. So Dylan became like a big influence of mine when I had just left healthcare. Now, I started not making a lot of money in promotions, and I knew that I could not be doing these 3-day party promotions. They were too risky. I was afraid they were going to get caught by the police. I was afraid I was going to be, implicated in anything like that. And if a rave gets shut down and your name is on the flyer, I don't know what that means. I don't know if you get fucked over for that or what. And I didn't want to find out. So after about 3 months of doing those kinds of promotions, I just went 1000% legit with it. And this was my lineup. My lineup personally for Lambo was Paris Club. That was our first stop. From Paris to Electric Hotel, from Electric Hotel to Time, and Time was mine. None of my other team took Time. Time was mine, and I fucking killed it for Time. We were always packed at Time. And then from Time to the late night spot, which was Cuvée. Those were my 4 locations. We went there every single night, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. That's where we went. That's where we were promoting. That was my lineup, and I fucking killed it, and I loved it. After about 2 months, I started realizing that it was not sustainable. Winter comes, people don't go out some months. Some months are, really, really slow. I started, of course, in May. So I had this really successful summer, and then it was starting to get cold outside. And I'm talking to Dylan and, trying to figure out what to do next with my life. So that was maybe like 6 to 8 weeks of my life. I decide that I'm going to try to get back into healthcare. Dylan agreed that it was in my best interest. There were several other influences during that time that did not want me working in promotions, that did not want me going to the nightclub, that they told me from day one. Billy Med was one of them. Scully was one of them. There were just several, Mike Lushik was one of them. There were just several larger promoters that had been in the game for a long time that came directly up to me and told me, you are not going to be okay in this environment. You were not made for this. You do not have you know, not what it takes, but like you are going to get taken advantage of if you stay here. Like you need to go back to what you were doing or find something else or take these lessons and, take them elsewhere. But you are going to end up either addicted to drugs, or bankrupt and having all these people mooch off you. And both of those things kind of happened. There was a 3-week period when I think I Molly maybe 18 out of 24 days in that period. And I remember going up to Sean Denham and telling him Sean Denham is a main staple in the nightlife industry in Chicago and has been for decades. I remember going up to Sean Denham and telling him, who was a very good friend of mine, and telling him, I need help. Like I've never done a drug before 2 months ago. And now out of 24 days, I've taken Molly, 18 of them that I know of, and we were also around this peer group that was putting Molly, DMT, whatever the fuck they had, ketamine, whatever they had in everything. I mean, if you walked into a room and poured yourself something to drink, there was a 50-50 chance that it would have who knows what in it. Party favors is what they called it. Special drink is what they called it. And it was just to the point where rock star lifestyle doesn't even begin to explain it. I mean, rock stars, go on stage and get paid. We were all like living in the underground, going to these underground locations and staying days at a time, when prior to that, I was fucking working as an administrator for rheumatology and endocrinology. I'd never tried a drug in my life 3 months ago. So it was just such a huge contrast, so difficult for me to make work. I could not make it work. And then the trauma started. So random things would start to set me off. I would start crying and I would not be able to stop. And mix that with, not good sleep. It's just a fucking mess. Like it's not good. You need sleep. And this is why, if you guys have been a part of any of my campaigns, after everything happened with the show and they did me so bogus, the whole intention with the show was positive. It was supposed to be like a public service announcement to hold people's hand and say, you can fuck up at life and you can be okay and rebuild and you can be better than ever. They did not want to exploit that part of things because they didn't want people to feel justified or like going to prison was cool, is my opinion. But they basically kind of destroyed, my ability to see clearly. And what I mean by that is I started getting extorted by an officer to nothing about promotions, actually completely unrelated. It was about fraud. About a week after I started talking to Dylan. So let me back up. I'm working in promotions and there's this girl, everyone calls her Tiny. When I first saw her, I'm not a lesbian and I don't really find myself physically attracted to women, but I thought that she was the most beautiful woman I had ever met in my entire life. If I was going to be a lesbian, I would definitely be attracted to Hispanic women. I love everything about them. And it would definitely, that's the way that it would go. She was always smelling good, always looking good, had a humongous, big, fake booty, big, huge, fake boobs. I wanted plastic surgery. I was natural, 100% natural. And everyone always said I had like a big round butt and that I had a good, shape. But with her, it was like, wow, like it was just very exaggerated and just like Betty Boop, is what she reminded me of, Hispanic Betty Boop. So I kind of fell in love with her in a platonic way, if that makes sense. She's a honeypot, her entire everything was attractive to me. The way she smelled, the way she spoke to me, the way she opened doors for me. And I'm not talking about physically opened the door and let me into a place. She brought me around men who lived in mansions. She introduced me to this guy named Ben, who lived in a mini mansion on Superior Street at the time, who gave me a Louis Vuitton scarf as a gift the first night that I met him. What? I had never even touched a fabric that was labeled with Louis Vuitton before in my entire life. And here this guy gave me a Louis Vuitton scarf, and she's the one who introduced me to him. And I just felt like I love her and everything about her. I didn't even know she knew Dylan. I had no idea, none at all whatsoever. I had met Dylan one time at a party in Pilsen that someone else brought me to. I think it was Arnett or Fluid or Caddy or someone like that. And they had brought me there for a party, and we spent probably like 3 hours, 4 hours there. And then I left, and my entire experience with Dylan during that time was I went in to use the restroom. It was just one single restroom. He was in the shower, and he opened the curtain, like, what the fuck, And I was like, please close the curtain, And like, I'm trying to go potty. And that was our intent. Probably said a couple other words to each other, and that's it. And that was my entire experience with Dylan. I had no idea who he was other than that. But I didn't think he was that attractive. I didn't know that he was on drugs or addicted to drugs or, bad behavior. I thought that he also worked as a promotional model, and that's how he made his money, and that his mom was rich and that he had generational wealth. And that was what I thought of him. So Tiny and I started hanging out every day. And while I was working in promotions, she would be like my wingman. We would go to the club every single day together. Or we would just be at our own houses individually, not going out. If we were going out, we were going out together. And she was dating this guy named Abe. And he was a Habibi, Arabic guy, owned a couple of stores in the south suburbs. A total fucking sweetheart. Just one of the sweetest guys ever. Didn't drink, didn't smoke pot, didn't do drugs, did nothing. Devout Muslim. And he was kind of, tricking off and showing out with a lot of money, getting different, very, very expensive cars and, taking us everywhere and paying for everything. And it was just a total rock star lifestyle, for those several weeks. Well, one day, Tiny starts telling me about these moves, that they're doing. And what she means by moves are like parties that they're setting up, funding for these parties. She had a move with Ben and his friend group that they were investing in some sunglasses line, and they were going to be selling the sunglasses, luxury sunglasses, at a very expensive price point. And we would go over there sometimes so that they could look at prototypes and decide on, frames, and if they wanted that frame or not at all. And so Tiny's opening my eyes to the business world, to networking, to all of the opportunity that exists in the nightlife. And I'm thinking, fuck healthcare. Look at everything I'm doing here. I had only ever interacted with 9-to-5 workers before. My mom was she was a salaried worker, but I didn't know anyone who owned their own business or, was politicking in this way. And Ben and his friend group were very attractive to me. I found them to be very, very attractive. And I don't mean that in a physical sense, like, oh, they're hot. I mean it like these people know how to live. And if I, stay friends with these people, if he's gifting me a Louis Vuitton scarf the first night that I met him, what is he going to give me in a year? What is he going to teach me over the course of that year? And the biggest thing about Ben was that he treated his dog like it was his best friend or his son. And I thought that was so adorable. I don't know what really made me so turned on by people who treat their friends and family so nicely. I mean, crazy that I would think it's good to have people around you that cherish you and treat you like you're amazing rather than assholes that blame you for stuff and abandon you. But, and I thought that the suffering in my life was over. And that was the first time I ever thought that the suffering in my life was over, was with Tiny and Ben. And I hadn't even been introduced to Dylan yet. That relationship that Tiny and Ben had was there, and then it was gone. It was like she completely refocused on Abe. Her and Abe would go to dinners once a month to see Ben and his friend group, but not consistently how they were before. And the partying around the group was becoming more exclusive. People were not bringing phones in. They wanted us at the beginning to randomly recruit women to bring to these parties, at the end of that, it was getting like very paranoid feeling, and like they were maybe partying too. It was just getting very paranoid feeling. Like nothing was going on in front of me. I couldn't see anything going on at all, but I could feel, as fuck. Like people would just be very uncomfortable. So that's when Tiny introduced me to Dylan. And she basically got arrested one weekend. We were not hanging out that weekend, and I did not know she got arrested. And she called me and said that she needed me to go with her to Maywood to pick up her belongings. And I'm like, Maywood to pick up your belongings? What do you mean? And she's like, yeah, well, we got arrested this weekend, me and Dylan. And I'm like, Dylan, oh God, that guy. Like, why are you hanging out with that guy? Like I was just not for it. Like, I didn't like him. And I didn't like how everyone was like throwing themselves at him. Like these women were so obsessed with him. And it was just like, ugh. There's never been, I want to be with a person who treats me like the center of their world. There's nothing attractive, in my opinion, about a man who gives the same amount of attention to me, his lover, his wife, his best friend, that he gives to any other woman that walks up. I like exclusivity. I value exclusivity. I want my man to be respectful and kind to all people, women or men, but I don't want my man to treat every fucking other person like they're the same as me. I want to be up here and all those people can be right here. It's fine. Treat everyone with love and kindness and respect down here, but I want to clearly be up here. And I want to do the same for my husband, right? I want to treat some random guy at a party the same way that I treat Xavier, right? So that's always been how I am. And I don't know, it was not like that. That was not the culture among these people. So she tells me basically about this case that she caught and that she needs me to remain in communication with Dylan for her because she's tied to this case with him. She can't have any direct communication, and she's paying 40 grand for a lawyer to get off these federal charges. And she wants to know what's going on with his side of the case. So as a good friend, of course I say, yes, I'll do it. So I'm talking to this guy every day, zero romantic interest, none whatsoever. And I'm kind of freaking out because at this point, I'm not working in promotions other than Friday and Saturday. I have no regular job. Maybe I was bartending or something like that. And I'm trying to figure out a way to turn my businesses that I'm working, which was staffing and hosting promotional and trade show modeling gigs, with a regular, steady paycheck. You could work 3 trade show modeling gigs that are 3 days, 12 hours each, and make $2,000 for that one show. And then you could have 3 months where you don't get a single show. So I was just learning about all of these endeavors and businesses and what I could do. And I was trying to navigate as a single mother, a young woman, fresh in business, just learning about these things, how to do it, and how to do it well. And so I'm talking to Dylan for Tiny, and Dylan and I just kept on growing closer and closer and closer and closer. For the first 3 months of my conversing with Dylan, we spoke about 4 hours a day, every single day on the phone. He told me his entire life story. He went to school at New Trier, which is in Glenview. His parents had money growing up. He got inaccurately blamed for involvement in some sort of cases that he wasn't responsible for. And because his family had money, was his belief, he was blamed for these things and incarcerated. If you incarcerate a child of a poor family, your chances of getting bond money, lawyer money, court fee money is very little. You won't get any money. If you incarcerate a child to a family that has money, now all of a sudden the court system has revenue. So he opened my eyes to a lot of that. And I started looking at my own childhood and thinking, there were just a lot of similarities. And I felt as though my family was targeted by DuPage County, Cook County, or whatever county we were in to pay a lot of money. And I mean, I told you guys yesterday, my father was incarcerated for a short time for not being able to pay child support. He had no money. He was suffering. And DuPage County locked him in a work release program and made this man in winter walk around with nothing other than the flannel on his back and some steel toe boots, no cell phone, no way for these employers to communicate with him, just walk around and found a job. He ended up getting a job bussing tables at one of these restaurants in the suburbs. And then my grandmother or someone finally paid his purge and he was able to get out of there. But I mean, it was just a really difficult, time. And the situation was so backwards. You don't imprison someone because they don't have money. Like that's just so backwards in my opinion. But the things Dylan was telling me, they were matching up to and kind of explaining a lot of the things that I had already been through and suffered through. And I felt accepted and understood. I shared with him, the Jamaica thing and a lot of the other things that I had been through, some of the other assaults, both sexual and regular. And I felt safe and I felt protected. And there were people who had harmed me in the industry, and he would get on the phone with them, and that would be the last I ever heard of them. His power and his ability to control this group, whether they realized they were being controlled by him or not, to Satan, to God, to whoever you believe in, he was the boss. And from prison, he could very easily say, get out of Heather's house, and would go. But me being there in the house with them face to face, asking them nicely 30 times in a 3-day period to go, I'd have luck. He would get on the phone in 5 to 30 seconds and they'd be packing their shit and leaving. And that was very attractive to me. I was very attracted to that. I felt very safe. I felt very protected. I felt very prioritized. I felt like a baby, in someone's arms, that they can trust. Like that's how I felt. From there, the conversation started going to, so the first part was establishing a common ground. He would commonly tell me, you and I, Heather, we're not like these people, these lurkers, these people that do drugs all day and party. We're not like them. We have educations. We have professional backgrounds. We have family members that are respected with careers. And his mother sold seats on the board of trade. My stepfather was a stockbroker on the board of trade. His father was a musician. My father was and is a musician, and had played in bands for years and performed live. And his father is a guitarist. My father is a drummer. So there was just, his mother is professional. My mother was a CFO for Bally Total Fitness and then Export. So it was just like I felt like I was kind of almost looking in a mirror. We were both super duper obsessed with the gym. He was working out there every day. I was back into fitness out here because I wasn't drinking anymore. I wasn't drugging. I was just, when that 6-week period of working in promotions was when I was experimenting with drugs and alcohol. Prior to that, no history of it. After that, no history of it. So it was just in that environment, and it's always been that way. There's never been a time where I felt like anything like that was a problem for me at all, except for during that time I was working in that environment. So I feel like the beginning stages of the grooming, the love bombing phase, where you are better than everyone else, you are the best thing ever. And this is all the narcissistic cycle of abuse that you can easily Google about this or YouTube about this, and it spells everything out for you right then and there. And I'm on the back end of this relationship, I'm reading these things like, holy shit, that's exactly what he did. So it was like, Heather, you are the most beautiful woman I've ever met. God, you are gorgeous. Can you send me more pictures? I love you so much. I'm so grateful to have met your acquaintance, to be friends with you. We're different than these people. These people come from bad backstories. These people have been abusing drugs since, their whole lives. These people's parents are not good people. These people, and the things that he would say to me would win me over because they felt true, and they felt like it felt like him and I were being separated for some higher calling. And like the rest of these people were fucked, like just not fucked like someone was going to harm them, but fucked like they had nowhere to live. They were selling drugs, a lot of them. They were engaged in God knows what type of oppression. They were being targeted either by Cook or the feds or the local or whoever the fuck was working them, walking them. When I say walking them, I mean forcing them into shit, but keeping them on a line so that when the shit gets too deep, they can retract them. Does that make sense? Meeting a lot of wealthy people and business people who do drugs, you will never see someone earning $1 million annual go and purchase their own cocaine. You won't see it. You'll see them send in a middleman, an intermediary, or whatever their drug of choice is. But my point saying this is that there's a very clear, when you reach a certain level of success, all this shit doesn't go away. You just get smarter at navigating it. And the people who Dylan and I were working with and exposed to, they were on someone's line. You know, they were oppressed and probably still are. You know, and they had a lot of bullying and a lot of external control, and a lot of them were Freemasons, and a lot of them were under protections of different, you know, variables, different organizations, different underground, you know, establishments, and some of them police, some of them not police, some of them detectives, some of them not detectives, some of them, you know, doing deals for the state, some of them working probably with mob or, you know, other. When I say the mob, I mean any group, organized group of people engaging in any sort of business that, you know, is deemed illegal or unethical. You know, and these people had ties, all of them had ties. I don't know, you know, about now. But in learning all of this from Dylan, and this is all on a recorded line, every fucking bit of it, it's all on a recorded line. I was not working in sexy content. I was on the phone with Dylan saying, I need to go back to healthcare. So what did I do? I got a job at the Illinois Bone and Joint Institute. And I thought, all right, I'm going to stop promoting for a while. I'm going to do only promotional. I'm going to start doing I'm going to stop doing promos in the club. Oh my God, it's almost been an hour. Part 2 is long, you guys, so I have to end this, but this is where it ended. I meet Dylan and I've gone through all of this. This is a literal like 3-month segment of my life. And let's end this with, I decide I'm going to go back to healthcare. I'm working at the Illinois Bone and Joint Institute. I'm going to only do promotional modeling and trade show modeling from now on. I'm not going to go to clubs anymore. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to promote. I'm not going to go to an afters. I'm not going to do anything like that. I had actually gone into the hospital and told them, I have been dosed, I have voluntarily ingested, and I have, you know, rendered myself incapable of normal thought processes from the amount of concentrated substance that I feel is in my system right now. And they gave me saline and they detoxed me right then and there. So that's documented. I decided that those 6 weeks, those wild 6 weeks, were not going to be sustainable and that I needed to figure something else out. And I went back to Illinois Bone and Joint, and I was there for 3 days, and it was very, very clear instantly that I could not. I just couldn't. I learned what business was. I learned how to make money on my own. I made $600 in one night. Illinois Bone and Joint was paying me that in a week. In a 2-week period, I was clearing about $850 at the hourly rate that I was getting paid after taxes. $850 for 14 days of work, or $600 in one night doing bottles. I couldn't. So I walked out of Illinois Bone and Joint Institute after 2 days, maybe. I never did anything wrong there. I never got in trouble there. I couldn't do it. I could not work for $19, $18 an hour anymore. I needed more. And Dylan was like, why don't you start doing webcamming and selling content? And I was like, I could do that, you know? And so that's where I went. I started webcamming and I started selling sexy content. And in doing so, I could still work promotions with Lambo. I could still throw parties. I could still be a trade show model. I could still exercise in the gym. I could find a way through web camming and creating content. I could find a way to do all of the things I wanted to do and still be able to spend 5 days a week with my children and make more money and have more time and be there to pick them up from school and be there to do homework with them and take them to the park during the week. And as I've said a million times, that's what it's always all been about. How do I make enough money to give my children and I a good life? you know. So that's where it ends for today. That was part two. Like I said, this is a 2 out of 12 series, so I'll be doing another portion of this, part three, tomorrow. I'm gonna try to keep these to 30 minutes because there's just a lot. There's a whole lot, you guys, and there's a, and I really, if you guys are content creators and you think you could help me with a documentary, I want to keep it to under 2 hours, but I want to make it really dope and really, engaging. And the main purpose of the documentary, not to glamorize the nightlife, it's to explain, it's to let my viewers understand me. So if there's anyone in my following that feels like they could help me with that, I am a fucking boss at digital content creation, but they're not letting me have access free reign to my devices. When I try downloading AI, ChatGPT, I have ChatGPT, they won't let me work with Canva, they won't let me work with anything. So I could realistically, with what I know and what I've already done, I could definitely create this docuseries or this documentary on my own. When you guys see shitty content going up on my YouTube, like yesterday, I tried to post some photos of myself when I was modeling like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even this year, I did photo shoots. I still do photo shoots all the time. Um, but I tried posting them. As soon as I clicked post, they fucked with the orientation and zoomed them all in so that you can't, they look like a fucking amateur did them. And they've also been editing my face and making me look real fucking bogus. So if you are someone who could help me with this documentary, I can afford to pay, but I don't have a large budget. I'm living literally day to day. All of my money goes into paying my rent and my car payment. I'm concerned about how I'm going to get money for the kids for Christmas, but I know I'll make it happen. Sponsors, if you're out there and you can help me with this, that'd be great. I'd like to be aware of the project. I'd like to produce the project on my own with a director and someone who can help me with the actual logistics. Please contact me. Contact me via email, please. Or you could also do DM on Insta. I try not to really make myself too available on there because I get a lot of hatred still. But yeah, if you guys could DM me on Facebook, Heather Gillespie is my profile. My profile photo is me and Weston. Or if you could send me an email to Coco, a GoPro solo production at gmail.com, that would be fantastic. Like I said, I could pay little by little over the course of the project. I want to be very hands-on with the project, and I'm also an asset with regards to that. So give me a call or rather shoot me an email if you can help me out with that. But we're going to leave part two at this. My work in the industry is only just beginning. My work in the nightclub industry is turning into a more part-time bartending, bottle service, events planning kind of scope. And I'm doing my best at this point in time to reincorporate the gym as well as, you know, learning the ropes with sexy content webcamming. So that's where we leave at the end of volume two. I had just met Dylan. We had been talking for several months. We were in an exclusive relationship, friends, but it's starting to get romantic. And he actually, in the next series, I'll talk about how he proposed to me shortly after that. I would say about 2 or 3 months after we met. But that's where we'll leave it for now. So, all right, you guys, thanks so much for listening. I know it's a lot, and I'm really excited to get a project together that, will help people understand me better, and also probably, bring some value to several other communities. So, have a great day. Happy Black Friday. The season of giving. So, sponsors, if you can, please help me out. I know a lot of people from the industry. Paul John, I know that you do horror and scary shit. If you're willing to work outside of that, your normal genre, I'd love to work with you in creating this docuseries or this documentary. I know that you probably charge a lot. I don't know, who you've been working with lately. I know that you comp a lot for your friend group, but I'm not asking for that. I'd like to, pay if you're interested. I trust you and I know you and I've seen the quality of your work. If you're busy, I get it. Anyone else who's associated with Paul John or any of these production companies or non-associated but knows me and thinks that they could be an asset with regards to this project, I'm really thirsty to get it done. I've suffered a lot at the hands of misinformation There's been a lot of really negative surrounding me, who I am, what I've done to others, what I haven't done to others. I'm a good person, and I'm very nice and generous and kind, and I'm not trying to harm anyone with my project. I'm just trying to get the understanding for my situation that it deserves, and trying to move forward. So, all right, you guys have a great day. Happy Black Friday. Sponsors, tee up.